The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. Bringing you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
I'm still somewhat shocked at how this all fell apart and that Penn State actually made the move to fire James Franklin.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Zach, it is a really unique scenario to see a coach like this. I mean, he's had a lot of success at Penn State, but he has been let go after the Northwestern loss. Your first reaction probably wasn't one that you were shocked because I know you've got contacts, but were you surprised by how many people were happy to see him go or not? What was just your overall thought about the Penn State fan base with Franklin being gone?
I think I'm still most in shock by just how quickly it fell apart. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. You go from being in the lead against Oregon in the whiteout game to firing the head coach that has 100 plus wins, all the New Year's Six bowl game wins, but just couldn't get to the mountaintop, right? Off of a college football playoff semifinal. Like, come on. I get it. But if you've been following this team this season, you knew this was necessary. People that are 1,000 feet away, that have the bird's eye view, that don't understand the situation are going to laugh at Penn State and say they're tanking their program. That's not it. This was necessary. It was due. It was time. Unfortunately, I mean, this program fell apart when James Franklin had the best setup, best personnel group. He said he had the best, that in combination of coaches and players, he had the best personnel group ever of his career. And they lost to Oregon. Okay, that's understandable. But then you let one loss turn into two into three, and those teams were Oregon, UCLA, and Northwestern. It's not like it was Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana. Then this would all be okay. It's like, oh, this is typical Penn State. They just lost all the big games. No, this was a new rock bottom for a James Franklin team.
I was shocked at the way they played against UCLA. The Bruins came out, they were at 24-7 or something like that. They just looked like they were the only team that practiced that week. That told me there were some cracks in the foundation from the players, but not necessarily Franklin and his staff. Sometimes you lose a big game, it takes its footing for a little while. But the way they played against Northwestern told me that the buy-in wasn't there anymore. Because Northwestern doesn't have half the talent that Penn State does. And they've got some physicality, got running backs, pretty good player, et cetera. Yep. But in the fourth quarter, there were times they ran over Penn State. And I was just like, how is that possible? Because one thing I never thought I would see was their defense just be average at best. Third and fourth down kind of plays. Mm-hmm. And that's when I thought to myself, it's a matter of time before he gets fired. Now, I didn't think he was getting fired after the Northwestern game. I really didn't. I thought they'd wait till the bye week at the latest at the end of the season. But when they drop the hammer, it is what it is. So my thought now is, how do you get this done quickly and try to do your best to mitigate losses to the recruiting? Because it could go 100 directions with the class of 26. And I did a podcast on Locked On the Portal earlier today saying, hey, the kids that are closer to home are more likely to stick with Penn State long-term. They'll at least take the phone call from the next coach. The guys that are from further away, North Carolina, California, whatever, that's more likely to be difficult. But they'll still get several of these kids to sign. It's the 27 and 28 classes who had just started to build their relationships. Those, and like the 27 class, you and I talked about it several times on Locked On Nittany Lions. Mm-hmm. That's a great group. In state, New Jersey's got some good players, and of course DC/Maryland, and then the whole Hampton Roads area. That area is just loaded. They're going to miss out on a lot of those kids. So my first question to you is, which coach do you want? And what do you think the fans want to try not only to get a good coach again, but somebody like Franklin could recruit? That is not debatable. Can they get somebody that can do both? Who do you got?
Yeah, there's so I have my list, I have the Penn State fan list, and I also have the Penn State list, right? In theory, based on what we know. This isn't some insider, no, but there are multiple different lists here. To answer what you say about recruiting, Penn State knew what it was doing with this move. When it comes to this move, they knew that they were going to take a hit in recruiting. So recruiting's the last thing on my mind right now, especially with the transfer portal. You can recover from this. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to be easy, but Penn State can recover. Keemon Spell was already flaking. Khalil Taylor had decommitted, and it's no surprise that the remaining players of Leighton Von Brandt and Gabe Jenkins also said adios for the moment. And who knows? Maybe they get a guy that ends up being able to recruit them back. Very unlikely. I'm just saying we don't know at the end of the day. So with that being said, my head coaching candidates that I would like, the home run with the highest ceiling, and then somebody that, hey, if you can outmaneuver an SEC program, these two, I think this is and my list is basically everybody else is kind of the same after that. Will Stein from Oregon, Mike Elko at Texas A&M. That's my list in terms of, hey, this is kind of realistic. This actually, now it's going to be difficult to pry him away from Texas A&M, but I like Mike Elko a ton because of the New Jersey connections. That's huge for Penn State, regional recruiting. He went to the University of Pennsylvania. Okay, so he's got the Pennsylvania connections, he's got the New Jersey connections, and he's shown that he can manage not only Duke, but now Texas A&M. So he's succeeding at every level. You got to give him a phone call and see what you can do to wrestle him away from Texas A&M. If you want that, not necessarily a long shot, but if you give this guy 5-6 years, can be the next Dan Lanning type. If you're committed to him, you got to go with the guy that's been following Dan Lanning. That has been his second in command, Will Stein. And it's because you get the defensive element with Mike Elko. I'm just tired of mediocre quarterback play, honestly, Brian. Maybe that's where that stems from. But Will Stein is a quarterback whisperer. He turned Dylan Gabriel into a day 2 NFL draft pick. Dante Moore went from an afterthought at UCLA, a 5-star bust, to this guy might be the future number 1 overall draft pick. Maybe that changes a little bit with that recent Indiana game, but now he's in the conversation. And it's been such a revelation for Oregon because of Dan Lanning, but also because of Will Stein. Give me that at Penn State. If you want the next Dan Lanning, go get the guy that is right there with him and bring that over. Just somebody that's high energy, young, and has shown, he has no head coaching experience. He's close enough. Okay, so that's my 2. Everybody else is kind of equal. The reason I don't include Curt Cignetti myself is because I don't think it's realistic. I don't think he's going to leave Indiana, actually. So maybe that applies to Mike Elko too. But Cignetti, I just don't see him leaving Indiana when they bought into him fully. He's on the short list for the Penn State fan coaching list. Matt Rule is going to be, depending on who you ask. It's split. Some people are going to say, go get Matt Rule. Other people are going to say, absolutely not. You are not getting anything different from James Franklin when it comes to the big games. Do not go after Matt Rule. Aside from how much do you want to align yourself with Penn State's past? Because Matt Rule is a Joe Paterno disciple, but he is from State College. He's from Central Pennsylvania. He played at Penn State. You can see, and he did work under the current athletic director in Pat Kraft. So you can see why Matt Rule becomes such a realistic option. He checks a lot of boxes for better, whether people agree with it or not. Matt Rule is actually almost objectively the best candidate for Penn State. Manny Diaz has popped up. Urban Meyer's popped up. Nick Saban. But if we're kind of combining all of those names together in a list of who's most likely the most realistic one, Matt Rule is going to be up there. Curt Cignetti, Manny Diaz, Urban Meyer, and I think Will Stein is maybe closer than people think.
Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, on drinks, on merch, on a bigger group if you want. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer it gets to first pitch. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee that takes the worrying out of buying. Gametime has last-minute tickets and zone deals for big savings, like 10% off exclusive zone deals for FIFA Club World Cup matches. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, the lowest price, guaranteed.
How about those Indiana Hoosiers going on the road and take down the Ducks in Autzen Stadium?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is one of the best feelings I've had as an Indiana fan, as someone who covers the Hoosiers and just loves being a part of Hoosier Nation. This is one of the best feelings that you can have as Indiana defeats the Oregon Ducks in their house 30-20 for the biggest win in Indiana football program history. I welcome in my guy, Brian Smith, our Locked On recruiting expert and a proud Indiana grad today, Mr. Smith. Welcome into the Locked On Hoosiers live show. Against all odds, Brian, the whole world said Indiana couldn't do it. Oregon was too good. Dan Lanning's too impressive. Dante Moore is the Heisman betting favorite, Brian. Ain't no way the Hoosiers could do it, but they shocked the world, my friends.
They executed. It's that simple. They were just the better team running the football, especially in the trenches. How about this stat line above all others? Oregon had 1 sack. The Hoosiers had 6.
6, Brian. You know how many times Dante Moore had been sacked on the year coming into this game? Once. One time. He had 1 pick coming into the season or coming into this game, and he had 1 sack coming into this game. Dante Moore walks out with 2 interceptions, and he was sacked 6 times. That's what you have to highlight here is the defensive game plan, the defensive effort, and just the defensive pressure that Bryant Haynes and the Hoosiers brought to this Oregon offense. And they did it on the road and made the Ducks look uncomfortable for 4 quarters, Brian. Bryant Haynes earned that $2 million paycheck today.
If he's still in after this season, I will be quite surprised.
You shut your mouth, Brian. Stop with that right now. People already came calling, though. That's the fun part, is people already came calling after him, and Indiana paid him to keep him in Bloomington. And today is why. You saw why today.
They don't have the depth maybe of some other teams, but they don't make many mental errors. And like that last interception, that's really basic football. But he waited for Dante just to start his motion. He knew what he was going to do, and he jumped the route. Like, it's really big, but he executed it flawlessly. Fisher had great plays where he cut off the angle. The secondary didn't give up the big plays except for just one, and at some point, you're going to lose a play. But that was the only play all game that Oregon got loose. They only gave up 13 offensive points. Now, everybody wants to talk about, Hemby and some of the throws that Mendoza made, Surratt, and that's all great. The reason they won today is defense. Again, 6 sacks. Oregon, I can tell you, as somebody as a recruiting analyst, does not screw around with offensive line recruiting. They are really good. Indiana's got a bunch of 3-star kids and transfers. There isn't a 5-star in that group. There may not be a 4-star. And they just got 6 sacks in Autzen Stadium.
Indiana taking down Oregon 30-20 on the road. We're going to talk all about it. I've got a list of bullet points that I want to go through throughout the entire game, from Indiana's defensive pressure to Fernando Mendoza bouncing back after a pick 6, the atrocious officiating Indiana had to go against on the road. So you take down the Ducks 2v1, basically. Also want to talk about Roman Hemby. I want to talk about Signetti. I want to talk about the Ducks a little bit, and I want apologies. I want people to apologize to the Indiana Hoosiers right here and right now, because all I was told this week, Brian, was that Indiana wasn't good enough. They didn't know what they were walking into, a buzzsaw that they weren't ready for big boy football. Plain and simple, the Hoosiers were the more physical team. I think they were just as talented and more talented in some areas than that Oregon Ducks team, and they were flat out the better team today. So for everybody, not just Ducks fans, I'm talking college football. I want people to apologize to Kurt Cignetti and this Indiana team. And if you don't respect the Hoosiers by now, then you're just a glorified hater and you never will.
I agree. It's amazing. I'm looking at some of these stats. Like Oregon averaged 2.7 yards per carry. Now, I know sacks are counting against that, but even though they averaged around 5 with their running backs, timeliness was a part of it. Indiana above the defense, like clutch plays, it's not even competitive. Third downs, Oregon, 3 out of 14, brother. That's barely over 20%. You're not going to win against FCS competition doing that.
Yeah.
And on top of it, Indiana outthrew them. They outran them. They're better third downs. Like Oregon needed to go to fourth downs, which is never a good sign. They just never found a sink against the Hoosiers. And it's not like Indiana, again, they're not throwing out the 85 Bears defense here. This is just a team that executes at a very, I don't want to say flawless, but darn near flawless level. And it's just fun to watch. It's so consistent. My question is, how do you do that with a bunch of transfers? Like, it's the hardest thing to do.
Discipline and game planning. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, can we establish too, the linebacker core for this Indiana team was just unbelievable. Good. We knew it was good coming in, and we knew Aiden Fisher was the All-American, and my God, he played like it today. We'll talk about individual stats here in just a little bit because Aiden Fisher needs to be highlighted, but so does Elijah Hardy. So does Isaiah Jones, who had the final pick there as well for the Hoosiers. Listen to this just as your linebacking core. You ready for this?
Let's go for
it. Aiden Fisher, 13 total tackles. Elijah Hardy, 13 total tackles. Isaiah Jones, 8 total tackles. Those guys also combined for 3.5 sacks from your middle level defense and had an interception in there as well. They made it hell for Dante Moore and that Oregon team who couldn't run the ball, couldn't throw the ball, could barely move it. Some of the running plays were nice for Oregon and they broke off a couple of big ones, but the defense came to play, and it's the thing that travels, Brian, and you pair that with something you and I talked about earlier in the week, running the football as well. Roman Hemby had a fantastic day, too. Those two things competing or, I guess, paired together, that's why Indiana won.
Total of 6 sacks and 8 tackles for loss for the Hoosiers. Comparatively, 1 sack and 4 tackles for loss for Oregon. And Oregon's all 4- and 5-star kids. There might be 1 or 2 kids on that defense that played that weren't 4 or 5 stars. And they have a very good staff. I'm not saying they don't. They got outcoached. Oregon got outcoached. And I'm not saying Dan did a bad job or anything like that. Indiana was just slightly above in pretty much everything. And maybe the thing that I'm sure it scared you too, when the pick 6 happened, I said, they're in trouble.
Oh, yeah. You could feel it shift. Everything went back to the Oregon sideline.
How often do you see a team just come right out and smoke a team after a pick 6? That was really wild to me. Even at the NFL level, that is incredibly rare. And those are older guys. Fernando Mendoza made money today. He made money today because sometimes you got to quote unquote win your clunkers. That was a horrific decision on the pick 6, throwing, jumping, like terrible decision. Comes right back out. Shows good technique, makes good decisions, and good ball placement. And by the way, teams in the future may want to rethink on how they guard Surratt. Just going to throw that out there. I love man coverage. I love the aggressiveness. Oregon's got guys. They didn't mix it up enough, and he got busy. Like, that's somebody we got to figure out, like, how are we going to cover this guy? That'll be the number one thing every other team that the Hoosiers play. Hemby's going to get some yards. They got a good offensive line. You can't give up those chunk plays and third downs. Like, good Lord, he was 8 catches for 121. Brother, that's pretty impressive.
That's an NFL level receiver is what that is.
Oh, yeah, he's going to start on Sunday. Somebody's going to take him in the first 3 rounds. He'll end up starting in the NFL at some point. This is great, man. This is why college football, I'm not saying this because I went to Indiana, but this is why college football is the best sport on earth. It is so up and down. There's so many memorable moments, and there's so many different opportunities for people to say, I remember when this happened, we didn't think, and then you can go back through, and the stats are the stats. They're final. Indiana won by 10, and they earned it.
Yep.
They flat earned it. It wasn't even a doubt.
Yeah. This isn't a fluke. This is not a fluke by any means. And Indiana goes on the road, controls the time of possession for the most part. A lot of those stats ended up being fairly even. Time of possession, total yards, right? Turnovers clearly were a big one down the stretch. Penalties ended up being somewhat even as well. But Indiana just executed at a higher level. And you're right. You talk about Curt Cignetti, who comes in a year and a half and has already turned Indiana into a legitimate program in college football. Brian, this was the biggest win the Hoosiers have ever had. This was the first time ever in program history that Indiana goes on the road to a top 5 team and gets a victory. First time ever. And they showed the stats. What was it, like 1 in 78 or whatever the crazy stat was? I mean, it was bad because Indiana has been bad. But this is a different team. And I genuinely hope that the college football world watched this today. They had no choice. It was the best game on. They watched this game and they change the way they think when they see the IU logo in football. Because if you don't, then again, you're just a bona fide hater and you probably need some help. Indiana is a good team, and now they're a good program. And so many people, I hope, got to see that this wasn't a fluke. You won by 10 on the road. You're the second team ever to beat Dan Lanning at Autzen Stadium. And the Hoosiers are now, Brian, a pure lock to make the college football playoff.
Yeah, they would have to have a significant amount of injuries and everything possible go wrong not to make it at this point. So I'm looking at the AP poll for this week. The Hoosiers were ranked 7th. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma just got smoked by Texas. That's, again, college football. I picked Oklahoma to win that game. Ole Miss barely beat some really bad team. I forget. Oh, yeah, Washington.
Yazoo. Yeah.
So they're going to end up being ahead of them. They beat Oregon. Ohio State and Miami, in my guess, unless A&M beats Florida by 30 tonight, I think IU will be ranked number 3 next week.
Yeah, we got people asking that in the YouTube comments. Yeah. So you think 3rd? You think that's where Indiana ends up this
Worst
week?
Case 4th, and it depends on the A&M game. If they come out and just weigh the wood to Florida, okay, maybe there'll be some people vote differently, but I think Indiana will pass them. That's my guess. Because if you look at the last 20 years, there aren't many teams that played better, regardless who the head coach was, than the Ducks at home. It's got to be a top 5 home field in college football. It is really crazy. So, again, hats off to Cignetti and everybody else on that staff for getting the team ready. They didn't look phased at all.
Never.
It really, that surprised me. There's usually that 5 minutes, like you got to survive the first 5 minutes against a quality opponent with good coaching. It didn't matter.
Nope.
And I'll take that every time. The only other thing that I'll throw out here, Indiana never let up too. They just consistent all the way through with everything they did. Very professional approach. Indiana might be the most professional team amongst the college. It's just the way everything's run is just so consistent. It's really, really fun to watch.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
Backs against the wall, season on the line. Your Texas Longhorns came through when it mattered most.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's dive in to the Longhorn offense first. Look, the first half wasn't great. A lot of what we saw against Ohio State and against Florida showed up in the first 30 minutes in Dallas. Penalties, the inability to run the ball consistently, collapsing pockets for Arch Manning, missed opportunities in the passing game, playing behind the chains, all of those things. It was not a pretty half of football for Texas. The Longhorns had just one good drive in the first half that ended in only 3 points. And that's all Texas scored in the first 2 quarters. And on that field goal drive, Texas had a 1st and goal from the 6, and they couldn't punch it in. So red zone struggles that we've seen all too often from this team so far in 2025. They showed up. Texas unable to come away with 7, ended up with just 3. The other 4 first half drives for Texas, 4 plays, -1 yard, punt, 3 plays, 0 yards, punt, 7 plays, 21 yards, doinked field goal, and then you had the kneel down on the final play. Not good. Texas had just 6 first downs in the first half, only 114 yards of total offense. Texas was 2 of 6 on third down. They had an average of 13.2 yards to go on those third downs. It just wasn't pretty. But the good news, these games are 2 halves. And in the second half, everything changed. The Longhorns got the ball first in the third quarter, the best drive of the season. 14 plays, 75 yards. Texas 4 of 4 on third downs. Of course, the touchdown pass to DeAndre Moore to cap off the drive. That one came on a third down. Great play design there from Steve Sarkisian as well. You had some pre-snap motion with Trey Wisner going out of the backfield. You could tell it confused the Oklahoma defense. DeAndre Moore was wide open. 14 plays, 75-yard touchdown drive that took 7 minutes and 11 seconds off the clock. I mean, to go from the, Manny Muhammad pick basically on the last play of the first half, and then to turn that into that starts to half number 2, best case scenario for Texas. Then the Longhorn defense shows up. They force a punt. Texas gets the ball back. Not a great play on special teams. Ryan Niblett lets one bounce further than it needs to be. There's also a penalty on the Longhorns. So Texas is backed up their own 5-yard line. And I'm there at the Cotton Bowl, just praying for a first down or 2 so we can flip the field a little bit. I'm not expecting this offense against that defense to be able to get into scoring range, but Texas, again, putting it together. 13 plays, 65 yards. It only ended with a field goal, but still, to get points in that spot on a drive that started at your own 5-yard line, that was huge. Speaking of huge, how about Arch Manning's throw to Parker Livingston on that first third down conversion deep in Texas territory? I mean, that's an NFL throw right there. That is Arch Manning's talent on full display, rolling out and just throwing a dime on the sideline to Parker Livingston, put it in a place where only his receiver could get it. His roommate, by the way. I know we heard that a couple of times on the telecast from Fowler and Herbie, but huge play. And again, it's only a field goal, but when you start way back in your own territory like that against a defense like this, and also you take 6 minutes and change off the clock, that's huge. In that third quarter, Texas had the ball for 13 minutes and 26 seconds. OU had it for 1 minute and 34 seconds. That's incredible. Texas ran 26 offensive plays. Oklahoma ran 4 in that third quarter. That is how you get momentum on your side. That is how you go from down 6-3 to taking a touchdown lead into the fourth quarter. And then another good drive for Texas, the 7-play, 42-yard field goal drive to make it 23-6, 3-possession game in the final minutes. Nice to see Texas convert a couple of third downs. Arch Manning with the long run on that possession as well. Just so much good from the Horns in half number 2. Again, it was the best overall half of football this team has played, but especially the offense. I don't care about Sam Houston. They're horrible. To do that against a team with a pulse, really impressive stuff from the Longhorns. And you talk about situational football was a weakness for Texas in Columbus and in the Swamp. How about Texas going 8 of 11 on third downs in the second half? And it started with the quarterback. Arch Manning, 21 of 27, 166 yards, 1 touchdown. Look, 166, 1 touchdown, not going to win you the Heisman Trophy. It's going to win you this game. You know why? We talked about the third down success. Arch Manning, in particular, 11 of 12 on third down, 117 yards passing, and that touchdown to Demo. Talked about that 29-yard run as well on third down. That was big time. What else was big time? 0 turnovers for Arch Manning. And 0 turnover-worthy plays for Arch Manning. John Mateer had 3 picks. He could have had 4, 5, 6. I mean, Jelani McDonald dropped an easy pick 6. Leon Galafau almost had himself an interception. There were a couple. Texas had 6 PBUs. They had an opportunity for 2 or 3 more interceptions. Mateer was just chunking the ball up for grabs left and right. Arch Manning, 0 turnovers, 0 turnover-worthy plays. It's not like OU dropped the pick. No, Arch Manning was smart with the football. Only 6 incompletions against one of the best defenses in America. Legit. And here's a key stat. Why Arch looked so good, why he was smart with the football. The average depth of target for Arch Manning in this game, 4.2 yards. 4th shortest in the country this weekend. Last week against Florida, we talked about this being a huge issue. The average depth of target, 20.2 yards. Texas was just chunking the ball down the field. Again, they were down in the second half. That was part of the game plan, but still way too many deep throws with a horrible offensive line. Texas brought things way in, a lot of quick passes, a lot of short throws at or behind the line of scrimmage. And over time, it wore that Oklahoma defense down and started to work. So much better game plan from Steve Sarkisian and executed to a T for Arch, who only had 1 or 2, I thought, bad plays in this football game, if that. Trey Wisner, he's the Sooner Slayer. He was awesome against OU last year. Awesome again on Saturday. 22 carries for 94 yards, the most rushing yards for a Texas tailback in a game this year. And he did it against a top 5 rushing defense in America. Also 5 catches, 34 yards receiving, couple of big third down conversion grabs for Trey Wisner. It's the stat. We said it on Friday. I know I brought it up in the post game too. It's now 26 of the last 29 winners of the Texas OU game has been the team that has won the rushing battle. Texas ran for 138 as a team, coming off a 52-yard clunker against Florida. 138 against OU. OU's defense, by the way, was giving up less than 75 rushing yards per game going in. Well done there. And here's an interesting, deep dive analytical number that I really like. Against Florida and Ohio State, Texas was 2 for 11 in power rushing. That measures successful running plays when it's 2 yards or less, whether for a first down or a touchdown. Get situational football. Hadn't always been there for Texas. 2 of 11 in those 2 losses. 4 for 4 in the win over Oklahoma. When they needed a few yards in big spots on the ground, they got it. The offensive line, still a work in progress. Much better in the second half. OU still had 25 pressures. They had 12 TFLs, but it was much better from Texas up front. And again, in the second half, they started to lean on Oklahoma a little bit. Way better than last week. And I think that's the best defensive line that Texas is going to see all season. The rushing numbers in the second half, pretty good. 21 carries, 94 yards as a team. I thought Arch Manning had more clean pockets as the game went along as well. So I'll give them some love. Again, that's just kind of what they are. They're never going to be elite, never going to be great, but they were good enough, and they started wearing down the Sooners in the final 30 minutes. So credit where it's due. 16 points, 304 yards of total offense. Not sexy, but Texas did what it needed to do. Again, smart. They made big plays when they had to. No turnovers. They stayed ahead of the chains in the second half. The biggest half of the year for the Longhorns. Season on the line. They delivered. Offense, defense, and special teams. But Sark deserves a lot of credit. OU, they kind of did what I thought they would do. They didn't blitz a lot. They dropped a lot of guys in coverage, plenty of 2 high, 3 high safety looks at times, a lot of that flyover style defense. They dared Texas to go underneath. I only remember 1 deep shot for the Longhorns. Actually turned into Arch Manning's only sack of the game. So Sark stayed patient. Obviously, credit the players for executing. A lot of yards after catch for the receivers. Trey Wisner made some guys miss, broke some tackles as well. But Steve Sarkisian was comfortable being patient. He knew what Brent Venables wanted to do. He devised a game plan that worked. So great showing for the Texas offense. Legacy game for Arch Manning. First big rivalry game as the starter at Texas. He came through.